education, leadership, and beyond, surviving and thriving. My name is Andrew Murata, host of the program, and welcome to the podcast. Happy end of summer. It's Thursday night before Labor Day weekend, and schools are getting started. So a shout out to all my educator friends there. Proud member of the Education Podcast Network, Voice Ed Radio Canada, and wherever you are taking in the podcast, whether it's up in New England with my buddies up there in Maine and New England, or down here in New York, or wherever you are, thanks for tuning in. Let's get right to it, friends. We're going to have a busy show. There's going to be a lot of guests on here, but we are going to talk to two authors. We're going to talk to two people from Maine, and we are going to highlight and look back at stolen seasons. Dave Eid is a TV personality in Maine, and Gary Stevens is a longtime educator, longtime athletic director in Maine. I met both of them up at the Maine Athletic Directors Association conference, and we're going to hear their stories and certainly talk about stolen seasons, what happened through COVID. So let's get right to it. A quick word from today's sponsor, IXL. They're a friend of the program. If you're an educator, you know about IXL. Here they are. Hey friends, Andrew Murata here, surviving and thriving. And I want to thank today's sponsor for the podcast, IXL. Discover the power of data-driven instruction in your school with IXL. It is the most widely used online learning and teaching platform K through 12. It gives you everything you need to maximize learning, from a comprehensive curriculum to meaningful school-wide data. And IXL's diagnostic is research proven to be a strong predictor of performance on standardized assessments, including NWEA, MAPS, STAR, iLearn, just to name a few. And the best part, everything I just mentioned is all integrated into one platform, so you can simplify your EdTech tools. Visit IXL.com to lead your school towards data-driven excellence today. The link is in the show notes. And again, I want to thank IXL for sponsoring Education, Leadership, and Beyond. All right. Thank you, IXL. We appreciate your support. Check them out. If you are watching the show live, jump in the chat. Let us know where you're coming from, and certainly say hello to myself, Dave, and Gary this evening. So stolen seasons. Again, this is Gary and Dave's book. We're going to get into it, and you can see it is a real book. This ain't a pamphlet here, friends. And as Dave said, you can work out while you're reading it. But thinking back to COVID, right? What was stolen from us? What was stolen? What was taken away from us? I love the concept. I love the title because it just ripped right out of us. And as an educator, as someone who loves kids in schools, the hugs, the high fives, the in-person, the importance of a smile and the contact with people, so much was taken away from us. And that's why it's important that we lead each day, that we show up each day in schools and make that the important day, right? We didn't know this was going to happen, and then bam, it went away for a couple of years, and we're still dealing with the effects, right? So think about those simple things, the importance of a smile, a handshake. Remember, they couldn't shake hands, and now it's such an important part, a smile. I remember I couldn't see who the kids were. I couldn't remember their names and their faces because of, and now here we are. So take advantage of those things that we have in schools. I know New England is opening after Labor Day here. New York, we are. So wherever you are in schools, take advantage of those little things because you just never know when they can go away. And we certainly lived that. So I wish everybody a great opening in their schools. New England, New York, up here in the Northeast. But let's get to it. Let's bring in our guests into the show. Coming to us from New England. They were just on TV together, and here they are. Gary Stevens and Dave Eid from Maine. Welcome, gentlemen.
Andrew, thank you. It's an honor to be on your show.
Same here, Andrew. Great seeing you again. And appreciate you taking time to read our book and hopefully work out with our book as well.
Yeah, you could do both at the same time. But Dave and Gary, real quick, introduce yourself. I know we'll get to know you during the podcast here and certainly hear your stories. They are the co-authors of Stolen Seasons, How Maine Sports Survived the COVID Pandemic. Dave, why don't we start with you?
Well, Andrew, I've been a New England native my whole life. I grew up in Massachusetts. Yes, a Red Sox fan,
Yeah, baby.
but we do have respect for the Yankees and the Mets. There it is. There's the Mets hat.
86, Dave. 86,
I
baby.
know. Listen. I can still remember that ninth inning. Um, but I've been a sports director at WGME Channel 13 and for close to 29 years now. I've been in the business over 30,
Wow.
covering sports. Been at Yankee Stadium multiple times for some of those memorable playoff games. So it's really been an honor to have covered such unbelievable events over the years. Um, what happened in 2020 is something we'll never forget. And that's the big reason why Gary and I got together and decided to write Stolen Seasons, which really, Gary's tagline has always been ordinary Mainers doing extraordinary things. And we're real proud of the book. And it's really stories of resiliency.
Love it. Love it. Thank you, Dave. Gary?
Well, Andrew, I actually, my entire career has been as an educator. Just completed my 41st year as an educator, June 30. And I did retire from working in secondary schools on June 30. Served in a number of roles in that time. I was classroom teacher. History is my passion, and athletics is another passion. This book brought them together. I was telling somebody today, really, this book it's not just a sports book; it's a history book. It's a chronicle of our times. But I've taught history and government. I've had a chance to serve as a principal of a very small school at a very early in my career. I've been an assistant principal, and for the last 28 years, I have been an athletic administrator at two of Maine's largest high schools. And now I work still work with the Maine Athletic Directors Association as their assistant director. So I will continue to mentor and hopefully help people as they work their way through the profession. But I'm also an adjunct professor of sport and exercise science at St. Joseph's College of Maine. I've already had my first day of school. I have 2 classes in the books, and I am and always will be an educator. Because the way I look at it, certainly my career as an athletic director, at 3 o'clock when most of the people were leaving, not only was I still there, but I always saw myself as the lead learner in the organization on campus. So I've never stopped learning and never stopped sharing. And Stolen Seasons represents an attempt by me to work with Dave in sharing those amazing stories.
Yeah. The stories are certainly in here. Stolen Seasons, the co-authors here, Mainers. I love it how they say that. If you're watching live, please jump in and say hello. Let us know where you're coming from. Dave, Gary shared, this was your idea, right? COVID happened. We had so much time. When did this idea land to you to share Maine's story of getting through this thing?
Well, that's a great question, Andrew. As sports were shutting down everywhere, on the local level, Gary and I would communicate quite often because he was tied in with the MPA, the Maine Principals Association, and we had no idea what was going on, what was next, what was, were the kids going to come back, were they going to wear masks, what was happening? And Gary was, I would have been completely lost without him as far as translating, the next moves. And we'd gotten together for a story down at Gary's school, Thornton Academy, and we had done an interview. They had done a wonderful job at TA. How they, there were tape marked lines throughout the locker rooms where kids could go, where they couldn't go. The whole 6-foot thing apart. But Gary and I, when we were off camera, we were talking, and I had talked to him about, someday writing a book about, chronicling this time. And we did. We got together shortly after and over a cup of coffee, and we started taking notes, and we started doing some interviews. And the next thing I knew, we had a we had a big book on our hands.
You could, you could get your workout and you could get your stories in as you shared there, Dave. Gary, what did you learn from the writing? Dave said that you did a lot of the writing, where Dave did a lot of the interviewing. What did you learn from the writing itself?
Well, first of all, I had no idea when I started how long it would take or how long it would be. I remember distinctly talking to Dave in July of 2022. This is 3 months after we had begun our work. And he was like, I think in 5 or 6 weeks, we can hammer this out and have it done. Well, it ended up being a 21-month journey, because as we started to do our work, word got out. We had people who wanted to share their stories with us. And some of them were, and some of those stories were some of the most powerful ones in the book. Like in the high school chapter of where Dave and I both are in Bangor, Maine here today, and the local high school cross country coach, Roger Huber, an attorney whose kids had logged 11,200 miles in the off season, separate from one another, essentially, to get ready for a season that literally got derailed 3 days before the state championship. And word had gotten out about us doing this book, and Roger reached out to Dave, and so we ended up, reaching out to the runners and getting their stories, and they were all very fascinating individuals. And one of those has a dad who was, again, you talk about connections. This young man's grandfather was the executive producer of the CBS Evening News with Walter Cronkite, so there's some interesting little backstories that we've come up with. And then, you felt, I guess I felt from my end, a responsibility to tell these stories, tell them well, display the emotion as best we could, try to recreate that emotion, and honor these people, because many of them told us they just wanted not to be forgotten. They didn't want to be that season with an asterisk that nobody knew what happened. They had something to say. They had a story to tell, and they didn't want to be forgotten. So as the process continued, I realized that not only was I doing a history of a time, but there was a responsibility associated with that to honor these people. And that was the best part of the book, was the connections with the people. That was by far the best part. And I have made lifelong friends, some of them whom I may never meet in person, just because of this book.
Wow.
Andrew, just to jump in real quick and to kind of piggyback what Gary was saying, when I interviewed Roger on Zoom, the track coach, he was tearing up telling the story. It was that powerful for him, and it meant that much to him. So we saw that across the board. The interviews that we did, people would get choked up because it was reliving, in a lot of cases, the worst times of their, lives. And it was so it was important, to tell their stories.
I had one young lady I was speaking with. She was a freshman on the women's basketball team at Trine University out of Angola, Indiana. They were in Maine during that week in March when the NCAA shut down everything to play a Sweet 16 round at Bowdoin College. And they'd had a Cinderella season, and they were certainly probably the underdog going into that Sweet 16, but certainly were there on the merits of their performance. And this young lady was she didn't play a lot during the year. She was a freshman on the team, but I was able to interview her because she was still at Trine at the time. And I started talking to her about her experience being in Maine. And she literally teared up, as Dave says. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm making this young lady cry. I had to find a way to try to turn it out and at least get a smile. So I sort of interrupted with the next question. So while when you were in Maine, did you have a lobster? And a big smile. You got a big smile on her face, and she told me about eating the lobster and how messy it was, and it allowed me to sort of steer her away from what was obviously a very emotional experience, and had to go through that again.
Yeah. And you both kind of started to answer it, because my next question was about the people. What did you learn about the people through this process, Dave?
Well, incredible. There's a gentleman, Ben Guite. Some of the the viewers or your listeners may have heard his name. Played in the NHL briefly. Was a superstar at the University of Maine. Part of those great Maine teams back from yesteryear. Well, Ben at the time was an associate head coach at the University of Maine, and later throughout the book had gone on to the Maine Mariners. The Maine Mariners are a minor league hockey team. They play in the ECHL. And one of the great stories of the book, and Gary and I talk about this often, Ben was the head coach. When they finally got back to playing hockey during the transition, COVID was still, they were still testing and that sort of thing. They were up in Trois-Rivières, it's in Quebec. They were up for a game on a Saturday night, and one of their players had tested positive. So that player was isolated now in a hotel room. So the Maine Mariners play the game against Three Rivers, and now this player, Kelty Jerry Leon, was left in the hotel in Quebec City. So the bus leaves Three Rivers, goes back to Portland. Ben, the coach, gets in his SUV. Now it's about a 5-hour drive, and that's if the weather's nice. Gets in his SUV. He outfits the back of the SUV with this shower curtain that he bought from like Kmart or Walmart. He got goggles, masks, and everything. Goes back to Three Rivers, gets Kelty, puts him in the SUV. Andrew, they rolled down the windows in the middle of December. It was right before Christmas. They had the heat blaring in the SUV. Kelty's in the back seat. They get to Customs. Customs knows exactly what's going on because they see the masks and everything. Customs couldn't get him through fast enough to get him out of there. They just wanted him out. They drove back through a blizzard with the windows down because at the time we didn't know much about COVID, how it was spreading and what it could do and that sort of thing. They drove back to Portland, Maine. How they made it back through a blizzard was a miracle. And every night for 14, because it was a 14-day quarantine, every night Ben and his wife would make dinner for Kelty, and Ben would bring the dinner by at his apartment, leave it at the door, and leave. And it was stories like that. Kelty's still playing minor league hockey.
Wow.
Ben is still coaching. He's now at Bowdoin College. But it's stories like that people are going to really enjoy reading because they didn't know the meaning of can't or won't. They just did it. They survived. Somehow, some way, they did it.
That is an incredible story showing the dedication of the coach and commitment to his players. Well told, Dave. Gary, is there a story that you wanted to share, one that sticks with you?
Well, and again, there are so many. I think we all have the Kelty story is the one that a lot of our readers resonates with, just because it's so ridiculous to conceive of, but then I don't think any of us could conceive of what COVID would bring. One of the stories that I think is really unique is in the chapter on the University of Maine, where Dave and I are about 8 miles from the campus of UMaine as we speak right now, and UMaine has really had a great tradition in 3 sports in particular: women's basketball, hockey. They've won 2 national championships. And in baseball, back for many years in the 70s, 80s, Maine was a regular participant in the College World Series. They would win the Northeast Division or Northeast Regional when they had true regionals then, based on geography. And the coach, Nick Durba, is trying to get his team ready to try to return to that status the college used to have. And then COVID, while they have some good young talent and they're trying to establish their leadership, COVID intervenes and knocks out their season about 13 games into the season. They're on their way to Baltimore at the time on I-95. They did not get out of Maine totally when they're told they have to turn around. One of the young men on the bus, Jake Reynos, was highly touted freshman. He'd been again out of Maryland. Ironically, he was going to go have his grandfather, who was basically gravely ill, was going to have a chance to see him for the only time, which didn't happen, playing a college uniform. But Jake and his teammates, while the university is shut down to them, find a local baseball coach, a high school baseball coach named Brad Goody, who has a barn. And in the barn, he's put up a batting cage for his son. And they learn about this, and they ask, do you mind if we work out at your batting cage? It's almost like, the Ray Liotta Shoeless Joe character coming to Kevin Costner. Do you mind if we work out here? It literally was what it was. So these UMaine players, they go to a barn and they hone their skills, and they also learn leadership. But they're very young, freshmen, sophomores, what have you. And so happens there is a gentleman who's an alumnus of the program who got drafted into professional baseball. His name is Jeremy Pena. You know him now as the shortstop for the Houston Astros. He ended up being the MVP of the World Series shortly after that. But Jeremy Pena hears about this and hooks up with these young men and mentors them and talks to them about weight training. And lo and behold, they that next year they really emerge. And then by the time Jake Reynes is a senior, he is one of the top batsmen, not only in the Northeast but the whole country. The UMaine has revived his program. It started in a barn, working out with a pro player who's working his way up as well. One of the neat little side stories to that is that Jake was a very talented juggler, okay? And he taught Jeremy Pena how to juggle. And there's a grocery chain in Texas, at least called HEB, big grocery chain. And they were doing ads, okay, for different salsa. And one of the salsas was Alex Bregman, the star third baseman, was endorsing this Breggy Bombs hot salsa. And I've actually seen this ad on YouTube. For the Breggy Bombs hot salsa, they show Jeremy Pena juggling the balls, about the jars of salsa on the ad as a way to sell it. And where did he learn that skill? From Jake Reynes in a barn in Maine. And what's also interesting is that Jake, after he finishes 4 years at Orono, he aspires to, again, test himself. And he is going to take advantage of that COVID year, which, again, COVID had there were some benefits that were given to people, too, especially in the collegiate ranks that came out of COVID. He takes advantage of his COVID year. Where does he go play his fifth year? The University of Houston. He takes up residence 3 miles away from where his mentor is making millions and is a major league star. That story is in the book.
Fantastic. Wow. Both of those are just incredible. Home runs, a little pun intended there. Really great stories there. Dave, how about the title? I love the title, the cover too. The cover's warm. It's not a cold time, right? Tell me about the title here and how'd you develop that?
Well, the cover actually came to mind before the title, because I just saw, that's Hill Stadium, where that's Gary's former home stadium there. And my vision was that just the sun going down on everything, on sports in general. And that was the vision that, and we, Joe Carpini caught that. Boy, he took a special, not a crane, but a lift to get up high through the goalposts and, to get the actual shot that we needed at the specific time with the sun going down. And we needed the stadium completely emptied. So we were really fortunate there for that, and with the clouds in the background. But this title was just kind of an easy one. I mean, I think that was the first thing we came up with, Gary, was the title, because we felt like there were so many seasons that were stolen from the kids, from the minor leaguers, from the pros, from the fans, the coaches, the parents. We had kids that were leaving Maine, going to Florida, that, to continue playing either baseball or football. It was just a really surreal time. And I just felt like we all got something taken from us
Yeah.
from this virus. Who was the culprit? COVID-19.
And what we did, yeah, I'm sorry, Dave.
No, but that was pretty much the gist of it, Andrew, was that just felt like everything got taken from us, and that's how the title came about.
Yeah, what we did we did change as we went through the writing process. So it was the subtitle. Originally, the subtitle was "How COVID Crippled Maine Sports." But as we wrote the book and told the stories, we realized that these are stories of resilience.
Yeah.
There's some positivity here.
Yeah.
And yes, the stolen part was negative. There's no question. It was a bad, frustrating time with anger, hurt, pain that I don't know if, when I don't think we've seen all the results of COVID yet in terms of our young people and the ability to communicate and et cetera. But we try to put a positive spin that there were people, again, ordinary Mainers who were going out of their way to provide opportunities for people, whether it be the high school athletic directors who were scrubbing basketballs because that was the guideline, or the stories that like Dave shared with Ben Gite, or I shared with the Maine businessman who owned a barn, or it could be the Portland Sea Dog owners, the Burke family, who paid all their employees, not just their full-time employees, but all the game day employees who relied on that income, who could have been retirees or people of modest means who relied on that income in a time when it was economically challenging. The Burke family paid all those people out of their generosity. Wow. So Dave and I realized as we started doing this, you could say COVID did cripple Maine sports, but what got us out of it was that resilience. So we said, this is a story of survival. This is a story of moving forward, moving on.
Use the word survived instead of crippled. I love it. Exactly. I love it. Well done.
Andrew, too, and it's one of those things where you don't know what you got until it's gone, and it was gone.
Yeah.
And they had me hooking up wires at my house. I had the chief engineer from our TV station, and I'm a dinosaur when it comes to technology. And I'm like, what do you mean the red cable? What do you mean? Because they wanted me to hook up the camera and broadcast from my living room. And I was like, this is crazy. We started with my cell phone, and they put an app on there so I could do the sports from the living room because everyone was isolated at this point. I'm like, this is the only thing missing was Rod Serling coming in the living room from the Twilight Zone. That was the only thing missing, honestly.
Wow. Hey, guys, I have a lot of friends that want to write books. They ask, how do you write books? Two of my good buddies right now, Eric Nichols and Casey Hallgarth in Oregon, are writing a book together. How did you do it? We just talked about why, the stories, the people, but literally, how did you get the words on the page? How did you get the pages in the book? And how did you get the book to a publisher? Dave, we'll start with you, and then we'll hand it off to Gary.
Well, it's definitely a collaboration. I mean, you gotta work together, and there's not a greater human being than the gentleman to my left. Gary's he's just an amazing person, caring, not to mention very smart. So you got to have the right formula. So Gary and I would play off each other's strengths. Gary's the writer. I tell him he's the Tom Brady, he's the quarterback. And I was
got his looks too.
I was the worker bee in the sense that Gary, for example, we were down at the Thornton Academy, and he'd be like, boy, Dave, I'd really like to get Cooper Flagg and get an interview with Cooper Flagg. Oh, everyone knows who Cooper Flagg is now. He's the top player in the maybe in the planet for his age. Will be a first-round draft pick in the NBA next year. Well, Cooper played in a state championship game when we started to get back to some sort of normalcy, but they were wearing the masks at the time. Cooper led this high school, Nokomis High School in Newport, Maine, to the first ever Class A state championship. the Civic Center, everyone was buzzing about this freshman phenom. Well, they were wearing the masks, and Cooper, of course, led his team to victory, and that was his one. Really, I think his one or maybe two games in the Portland area. And then he went on to Mount Verde Academy in Florida. Well, we got Cooper flag. We did a Zoom interview with him, and Gary put the words in a beautifully written chapter. They were just, you have to work together. You have to find a good publisher. I contacted two local publishers. The first publisher I contacted right away, it was about price. It was about this is what you can do for this. This is what you need for this. I'm like, listen, I called a second publisher, local, and she was, Marianne was just phenomenal, Tower Publishing, and she wasn't interested in the price. She was interested in the story, or in this case, stories, plural. She loved our idea. She loved the concept, and she was so welcoming. And we met with Marianne. There was no debate. I mean, that was who we were going with. And they have been phenomenal to work with, and they helped us every step along the way.
Nice. Gary?
Yeah, I would echo what Dave is saying. And again, a lot of it, you have connections. Dave, given his role, is to get to Cooper Flag is not easy. One time would have been very easy, but right now, I mean, he is just so high profile. But Dave was able to get to Cooper Flag. Dave was able to get an interview with Jeremy Swayman, arguably one of the top three goaltenders in the National Hockey League. Again, who is very much protected by a professional organization. So he was able to use those skills he has as a journalist and his reputation. And Dave has a statewide name. People know who he is. He is a television personality and somebody that they trust. He's the most watched sportscaster probably in Maine. Wow. I think what I was able to bring, again, was some of the process. Once we had the material, it was like in terms of the writing process. One of the things I want to do is I want to get this right, do it the right way. And I actually, as I was writing, I was watching a lot of book talks from probably my favorite author of all time, the late David McCullough. And I've read all of his stuff about the Brooklyn Bridge and the Johnstown flood and Truman and all those books. And you can go on YouTube and find these talks that he had given on C-SPAN or before college or wherever. And so I got a good sense of his process, because it was not really unlike what we're trying to do. You're trying to chronicle something with some interest in it about people that will be familiar to the audience, but also people who will not be familiar. And he had a few key lessons. Number one, don't have any preconceived notions. Go into an open mind. And I think, what we just told you about changing the subtitle, that's a prime example.
Yeah.
We learned as we went along that this was a survival story. This was a story about resilience. Another thing he talked about was write about something that you're interested in. Write about a book that hasn't been written about before. I don't know if anything has been written like this. So I think we've cornered the market there, at least, and I would encourage others to follow. And the other thing he talked about was write the book as you research it. Now, when I was in college, I remember writing big reports, term papers, and with the note cards and laying them out and doing all the research and then trying to figure out the text. Well, what I did just opposite here. I wrote the text as I'm talking to these people, literally transcribing their words, but trying to put some meat on the bones as well. And then you talk to somebody else, you may get something that supports what you said, or somebody who may have a different position. So you juxtapose those two people in that narrative. So that was the other thing I learned, was you write it as you do it. And the first words were the chapter about the community college team that won the national championship after being without basketball for over a year. Heard at the same conference you attended the year before, or 2 years before, Andrew, heard a speaker, the coach of that team. He was a substitute. It was a gift. He was a substitute for Matt Mulligan, a longtime NFL player who couldn't make it. He told about his story, and he said, our journey to our championship began during COVID. My ears went up. Dave interviewed him, started writing his story, started researching that story, and we're off and rolling.
Wow. This is fantastic. It's great to hear how you complimented each other and your writing, and Dave, the interviews and connections. Well done. Again, the authors of Stolen Seasons, How Maine Sports Survived, not was crippled, survived COVID. So well done to the both of you. Congratulations.
Thanks, Andrew.
Thank
I
you.
do have some local questions because I'm fascinated here. I loved my time in Maine. It was mid-April, Gary, and I drove home in a blizzard. Barely survived. But hey, I got some local questions. You ready? We'll alternate. Dave, we'll start with you. How come you don't talk funny? I was waiting for you to say, the car you sound like me. We sound similar. Whereas if you're from Boston, you sound like you're from another planet. How come you don't sound funny?
I'm actually from right outside of Worcester, and I have Worcester. I have tried to tone my my Worcester accent down. Sometimes it comes out late at night during a sportscast. It'll come out. The Boston. There is a little difference between Boston and Worcester, but I do have a little bit of an accent. Even though I've been in Maine for over 30 years, I absolutely love our state. I love the people in it. They've taken me in like one of their own. But because I wasn't born in Maine, they said I can't be a Mainer. So I guess I'm Worcester for life, Andrew. I don't know what to say.
Go Crusaders, baby.
That's right. Yeah.
Gary, does hockey, as you say, dominate Maine sports? Is it the king?
I have to be very careful when I answer this question because Dave is a hockey dad. His son is a collegiate hockey player. So I have to be very careful. But I'm going to be honest.
Yeah.
My answer for that is actually a qualified no, it doesn't dominate. I will say this. When the University of Maine hockey team is rolling, and they have turned it around last year, they create an energy. When they won those 2 national championships, it's an amazing energy. Their arena fills out, and they are definitely a statewide event. And we've had other hockey moments. There was a classic one in the 1970s when the old Maine Mariners of the AHL hosted the Moscow Dynamo on New Year's Eve and beat them. And this is back during the Cold War.
Yeah.
And that was statewide news. I remember that very, very clearly. Drew Callender scored the game winner and upset this Soviet team. A term we don't use the word Soviet as much anymore. But when it comes to the high schools, and I think even Dave's also he's a girls basketball dad. When it comes to the high schools, in Maine, people see their self-identity comes out in the form of their high school basketball program. Now we have a great hockey program at Thornton. We've won some state titles, and so there's certainly hockey enclaves in Maine. Lewiston would certainly be an example. But most communities, they have a basketball team. It is very similar to Hoosiers. You have gyms like that in this state, and they get to those small towns, play in those little tiny gyms, and the big event of the year during our February break, during President's Day week, is them gathering in Bangor or Augusta or in Portland for the state basketball tournament. And the last one out of time literally shuts off the lights. And if you win, you get greeted. Sometimes when you come into the county, not just the town, you are greeted with a motorcade, and you are heroes for life. So although there definitely is some interest in hockey, I think basketball captures the interest of most high school fans in Maine.
Okay, I'll take that. I'm a hooper, you know that. Dave, dealing with the cold. I mean, I was there mid-April, and I'm in snow. How do you survive the cold? Because it is so cold up there.
Andrew, I'll tell you a quick story. I was doing a live shot at Hadlock Field, home of the Portland Sea Dogs, for their home opener. And honestly, I forget the day, what year it was, but it was the late Johnny Pesky was there throwing out the first pitch. And I was talking to Johnny Pesky, and this snow squall came out of nowhere, dumped 5 inches of snow in an hour. They canceled the game. it was like it just reminded me of the Snow Bowl game in Foxborough when the Pats down the Raiders that started off the dynasty run. It's incredible, but I think that those April snowstorms, the 40-degree with light rain, and you're in Hadlock Field, shooting a baseball game. You appreciate those July, August, September days. It's well worth the wait, but there's no such thing as 4 seasons in Maine. I mean, it's like winter and then a little bit of summer.
10 and 2, 10 months
Yeah.
and 2 months. Yeah. Wow. Well, it is certainly beautiful. I've been to Acadia.
Oh, it's gorgeous there.
Allagash beer is my number one brew. So
you have to come. You have to come visit, and really in the fall, the 2 weeks that we have in autumn are very, very nice. If you can get those 2 weeks, early October, I think the foliage is gorgeous, and it really is a beautiful state, and it's filled with great people. And like I said, Gary and I are both very blessed to have made our careers in the state of Maine.
Yeah, two of them right here. Gary Stevens, Dave Eid, authors of Stolen Seasons. Last local question, Gary. We got people from all over the country watching. Your favorite way to eat a lobster?
I don't eat a lobster. They are expensive and they're messy. I've had a lobster once to say that I did it, but I am not a lobster person. My wife is the lobster eater in our family. In fact, we've gone to her folks for many years, would have all the siblings and the in-laws, and that would be me. And my mother-in-law was always kind to have a nice steak for me while everybody else was eating their lobsters. I did get the corn on the cob. I did get that. I do not eat lobsters. So if you want to talk to what it's like to eat lobster, maybe Dave can help you.
Andrew, let me just jump on that one. First of all, you want to go with the hard shell. There's more meat in the hard shell, and you need the crackers. I go right for the claws first. Crack them open. I don't even use butter when I eat my Maine lobster. I like it nice and steamed, nice and hot. And then you go for the tail. And there's nothing in the world quite like a Maine lobster. You have to work for it. I don't like soft shells. I would recommend any viewer out there that's watching the podcast tonight, if you're coming to Maine, get a hard shell lobster if you can.
And they're different than the crab, right? The crab, you could do the claw, and it's like coming out. It's a little more flaky, right?
Yeah, you gotta work for it. You need that little tool there. There's a little fork, and you want the legs a little, so you can get the fork in there and pull the meat out. And you definitely work for it, but it's well worth it. I'm telling you, there's nothing like it.
We got to give a shout out to the Maine Principals Association. They took me to a seaside lobster bake. We had cold beer, and it was the best. I had it all over me, like you said, Gary. It was messy.
It is.
But I didn't pay the bill that night, so it worked out. Guys, we're going to get to rapid fire. This was fun. Before we do that, is there anything else you wanted to say? Shout outs to your family, your friends, or anything else you wanted to say? Gary, we'll start with you.
Well, certainly that you have a big support system to be able to do something like this. Dave has been obviously an incredible partner and continues to be. We continue to work together very closely because not only are we the authors of this book, we are working on the marketing of this whole thing. And it's certainly something that's neither of ours wheelhouse. Dave is a television journalist. I'm a teacher, and I have not done anything like this before. So we appreciate all the folks who've helped us out as we've done that. Certainly my wife, Ida Atkinson, has been an incredible partner in this whole thing because she has had to listen to me talk about what I'm doing ad infinitum since April 2022. We got to work on this. She has now become one of our top salespeople. She loves the Kelty story. In fact, we were in a gift shop in Old Orchard Beach, Maine, right next to Saco, where I worked my last 17 years. And they had a small book section, and she was talking to the person at the cash register and mentioned, "Hey, my husband has just co-authored a book. Do you sell Maine books in your store?" And she told her the Kelty story about the hockey trip through the blizzard that Dave related earlier, and the woman wanted copies to sell in her store. So my wife has now become a great marketer for us. But I appreciate her support in allowing me to take the time and the effort, and also to take her time to get the feedback. So without her, I couldn't do it. And I would also be remiss if I didn't mention the staff at Thornton Academy, where I have spent the last 17 years, our headmaster, Rainey Menard, and my supervisor, Nick Tabor, and all the people there embrace this project wholeheartedly. The school is on the cover, obviously, for one thing, so it's good for them. But they were truly excited to have us do this, and they've been incredible supporters of the project.
Awesome. Dave?
Well, you know, Andrew, this is I probably need a little time here to kind of digest everything. And so for me, COVID and getting into the book was the last thing, I was thinking about at the time. So I'll give you just the Cliff Notes version of my journey from COVID on. My daughter, Danielle, was in the book. Gary actually interviewed her, but she was the captain of her senior captain of her high school basketball team. They didn't play during 2020, but a group of athletic directors in Central Maine, they put together this makeshift tournament, and it was, it wasn't MPA sanctioned, it wasn't a state championship, but it was something for the kids to do. My daughter's team wasn't very good. They didn't play that year. They didn't practice, but they did join this league, this tournament, and they were up against the defending state champs. And so we knew it was going to be one and done. Now, my wife at the time was battling cancer, so obviously we couldn't go to the game. We were watching on the online, version. And at the time, I didn't know that was going to be the last time Lisa was going to see Danielle play. And this is in the book, and you can't make these things up. They happen organically. As we were watching, I remember they were down by 25 points, and I remember thinking, "Oh my gosh, I'm going to be late getting the camera on to do my sportscast at 6:20." It was right around 5:50. They're getting clobbered. Kensal, my daughter went to Kensal, and there was about 9 seconds left in the game, and a girl on the other team had fouled. Had gotten fouled. We got the ball back with 9 seconds left. We're watching. My daughter drains a three at the buzzer, and obviously they didn't win the game. But that was my wife. That was her last. That was the last time she saw Danielle play. She saw her hit a three. So fast forward, that was 2021 when Lisa passed away. For me, and I put this in the book, really the silver lining was to care for her at that time. Fast forward, I have since met somebody that's very, very special to me. One of the things my wife had always talked about was for me to, eventually move on with my life. And I met somebody very special a couple years after Lisa had passed. And she has been a phenomenal piece to what Gary and I have done. One of many, many things, but Kate Vickery, and she's sitting right across the way here. I wish she would come over and just say hello.
Okay.
If the listeners or the viewers go on to the website, Kate put it together. It's stolenseasons.com. She did it with a couple glasses of Pinot, and we had some appetizers, and she put together a fantastic website. So my life has gone in so many different directions. We pay tribute to Lisa. She was my wife for nearly 25 years, battled cancer for stage 4 lung cancer. She never smoked for 6.5 years. And after a while, her one wish was for me to find love and happiness again. And it happened.
Wow. Oh, Dave. Wow.
I wish Kate would come over here. She won't. I know she won't. And I'm not going to turn the camera, but she did. She's done a phenomenal job, and she's so close to Gary, and yeah, we're truly blessed.
Yeah.
So it's been, Andrew, it's been quite a roller coaster.
Beautiful story there. Kudos to your daughter banging that three. Guys, this was great. Friends, again, the authors of Stolen Seasons, Mainers here, and great job, guys. I appreciate it. Let's ask a couple last questions, and then we'll get you on your way. We want to support your book, and certainly I'll put that in the link in the stolenseasons.com in the link. So these are rapid fire questions, guys, real fast. First thing that comes to your mind, are you ready?
Yes.
Here we go. Gary, we'll start with you and we'll alternate. Gary, last book you read.
The Price of Politics, Bob Woodward.
Dave, last movie you saw.
Oh, Twisters.
Last concert you went to, Gary.
At Saratoga Performing Arts Center, I saw the Bare Naked Ladies in Hootie and the Blowfish.
Wow, nice. You got to get seats at Saratoga. I was in the lawn once.
I was up on the lawn. I could barely see them, but I was there. And they're $10. I couldn't go wrong.
Dave, your favorite dish?
Oh, chicken cacciatore.
Hey. Gary, your favorite place to travel?
Favorite place I've ever been is Ireland.
Beautiful.
Honeymoon trip.
Dave, your favorite singer?
Oh, I'm going to have to say Richard Marx.
Oh, beautiful. You get the hair going.
I got the 80s hair going. Actually, I'm losing my hair, Andrew, truth be told.
Gary, if you weren't in education, what field would you be in?
I would be a journalist, not a broadcast journalist, but I would have been probably in print journalism.
Well, and here you are doing it now. Dave, what's a pet peeve of yours?
When people are driving on the highway, they cut in front of me and they don't use their blinker. It drives me crazy. I'm already on blood pressure medicine, and my blood pressure goes through the roof. I don't know why.
It's this easy, right? It's that easy.
Just put the blinker on. That's all. You can cut me off.
Gary, Maine is fill in the blank.
Home.
Beautiful. Dave, at 8 a.m. on Saturday morning, I feel
great. I'm having a coffee.
Gary, one thing you're curious about.
Why our country has gotten as uncivil as it is.
Good one.
How we've gotten here.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully your stories of survival and perseverance will bring people back together. You celebrated that here in the book. Again, friends, this is Dave Eid and Gary Stevens. Guys, if they wanted to get in touch with you, to interview you, to buy the book, what's the best way they can get in touch with you?
Gary, you want to start?
Sure. I would say, as Dave mentioned, we have a website, www.stolenseasons.com. That's simple. In the website, you will learn about Dave and me. You can find out about our background. You'll find out about the book. You'll see our testimonials, which include everybody ranging from a high school cross-country coach to a NHL goaltender to a United States senator. And you can also get links to order that through Amazon or our publisher, Tower Publishing. We also, if there are any Maine people in the who are among our viewers here today, we are in several Maine bookstores. Sherman's up and down the Maine coast, the University of Maine bookstore. We're in Barnes & Noble in South Portland. We are at Moody's Diner, which you may have driven by on your trip to Maine, Andrew, at their gift shop, as well as the Maine Diner and other places listed on our website. Or you can contact Dave or me through our email, and we'll be happy to hook you up with a book. I'm gstevens@sjcme.edu.
Andrew, I want to add that, honest to God, we never ever got in this for money. In fact, we knew if we could break even, it would be a miracle. So the money part was never. It was more about telling the stories, and that's the God's honest truth. I think the easiest way is if people want to learn about the book, and there's also a couple of links if they did want to purchase the book through either Amazon or Tower Publishing. The link is right there. Kate's phenomenal work on our website, Stolen Seasons, all one word, stolenseasons.com. But for me, I'd love it if anyone wants to reach out. My email at work is deid, D-E-I-D, at sbgtv.com. That's samboygeorgetv.com. I answer every email, good or bad. So it would be an honor to communicate with some of the viewers that may be watching today.
Beautiful, man. I appreciate it. Well done on the book. I wish you both the best on your journey. Thanks for sharing your stories today. Thanks for the time. I got a 6:30 dinner date with the family downstairs. I think it might be chicken cacciatore.
Oh, Andrew, I'm coming over. Hey, thank you so much. Again, it's an honor to be a part of your podcast.
Awesome.
And thank you too, Andrew, for having us. And we did a book trade, you and me, when you were in Maine, and I really enjoyed Surviving and Thriving. I read it very quickly. I read it over a period of mornings, and I learned a lot from your experiences as an NCAA official. I know Dave would love to hear those stories. I may share that book with him so he can.
We got to get Danielle a copy too for hitting the three.
Yeah.
So we'll
nothing but net, Andrew. No rim, nothing but net.
You guys stay on the line. We're going to sign off here on the podcast. Check them out, guys. StolenSeasons.com. Here's the book. Signing off for Dave Eid and Gary Stevens. My name is Andrew Murata, host of Education, Leadership, and Beyond. Keep surviving and thriving, friends. Guys, great job.
Thanks, guys.